اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا. ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار يا أبا عبد الله. لقد ضمت الرضية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام. وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت. ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأضالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها. ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم وأشياعهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم يا أبا عبد الله. إني سلم لمن صالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان. ولعن الله بني أمية قاطبة. ولعن الله ابن مرجانة. ولعن الله عمر بن سعد. ولعن الله شمرا. ولعن الله أمة أسرجت والجمت وتنقبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي لقد عظم مصابي بك. فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني أن يرزقني طلب صارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بمبالاتك، وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشيائكم، برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم، أتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم، وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحق، وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن صالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم، وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم، ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم، أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة. وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني طلب الثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا بمصيبته مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رضيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع أهل السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية، وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين، على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله، في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين عليه السلام وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني وابدع به أولا، ثم الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا، ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجان وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. Please go to prostration. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين، لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رضيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين عليه السلام يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين عليه السلام وأصحاب الحسين عليه السلام الذين بذلوا محجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الفاتحة.
Mu'mineen, today's program is dedicated for the Isal Sawab of Maroom Muhammad Ashik Shah and Kul Marumeens, Marumeens of Manji family, Marumeens of Punjani family, Marumeens of Kurji family, Marumeens of Asaria family, Marumeens of Dala family, Marumeens of Ismail family, Marumeens of Jafar family, Marumeens of Kasmali family, Marumeens of Rauji family. Mo'mineen Nazni Majlis Bande Khuda Tarafti Rajab Ali Qasim Ali family na Marumeen, Jetha Pradhan family na Marumeen, Muhammad Ali Pradhan family na Marumeen, Giwala family na Marumeen, Rajwani family na Marumeen, તથા કુલ મરુમીન આઈસાલે સવાર વર્તે મજલિસ રાખવામાં આવેલ છે. તેમજ આજની મજલિસ અમીર અલીભાઈ વાલજી તરફથી તેમના મરૂમ પિતાજી મરૂમ મોહમ્મદ અલીભાઈ વાલજી, મરૂમ માતાજી મરૂમા ઝૈનબભાઈ મોહમ્મદ અલી વાલજી, મરૂમા કનીઝે ફાતિમા મોહમ્મદ અલી વાલજી, મરૂમ મોશીન મોહમ્મદ અલી વાલજી તથા કુલ મરૂમીન આઈસાલે સવાર વર્તે રાખવામાં આવેલ છે. તેમજ આજની મજલિસ શબીરભાઈ સાદક તરફથી મરૂમા માસુમાબાઈ વાજીદ અલી સાદક, મરૂમ ઓનલીભાઈ દામજી, મરૂમ અફઝલ વેલજી, સાદક ફેમિલીના મરૂમીન, ડોસા ફેમિલીના મરૂમીન, દાતુ ફેમિલીના મરૂમીન તથા કુલ મરૂમીનના ઈસાલે સવાબ અર્થે રાખવામાં આવેલ છે. સર્વેને દરખાસ્ત કરવામાં આવે છે કુલ મરૂમીનના ઈસાલે સવાબ અર્થે એક સૂરે ફાતિહા. અલ-ફાતિહા. બિસ્મિલ્લાહિર્રહમાનિર્રહીમ. અલ્હમ્દુલિલ્લાહિ રબ્બિલ આલમીન. અર-રહમાનિર્રહીમ. માલિકી યૌમિદ્દીન. ઇય્યાક નઅબુદુ વ ઇય્યાક.
ये راستہ خدا کا ہے، راستہ حسین کا. دنیا کا کوئی قریہ یا کوئی بھی کونا ہو، عاشور پہ چہلوں پہ آتے ہیں جہاں بھر سے دیتے ہوئے صدا. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليًّا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليًّا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
सलवात, नारे तकबीर, नारे रिसालत, नारे हैदरी, कमाले बंदगी इसके निशाह हुसैन, कमाले बंदगी इसके निशाह हुसैन, जमाले सर इलाही के राजदा है हुसैन, जमाले सर इलाही के राजदा है हुसैन। गला कटाए रिसालत की आबरू रख ली, गला कटाए रिसालत की आबरू रख ली, है सच्चा के मस्जिद के पासबा है हुसैन। सलवात।
पर मोहम्मद व आलि मोहम्मद सलावत। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मोहम्मद व आलि मोहम्मद। करीम करबो बला मौजज़ा दिखा दीजिए, करबला याद बहुत आती है बुला लीजिए, करीम करबो बला। हुसैन आप जो चाहे तो कुछ नहीं मुश्किल, तड़प रहा है बहुत बला की याद में दिल, तड़प रहा है बहुत बला की याद में दिल। फिर एक बार मुझे करबला दिखा दीजिए, करबला याद बहुत आती है बुला लीजिए, करीम करबो बला। और मेरे ख्याल में जब आए दो कटे बाजू, अलम को देख के आँखों में आ गए आंसू, अलम को देख के आँखों में आ गए आंसू। तड़प रहा हूँ अलम दार से मिला दीजिए, करबला याद बहुत आती है बुला लीजिए, करीम करबो बला। है अश्क आँखों में और दिल उदास है मेरा, मुझे बुलाएंगे कब आप करबला मौला, मुझे बुलाएंगे कब आप करबला मौला। कुछ आके ख्वाब में है मुझको आसरा दीजिए, करबला याद बहुत आती है बुला लीजिए, करीम करबो बला। और तुम्हारे रोज़े पे आने में आज दिक्कत है, मगर खबर है तुम्हें मुझको कितनी चाहत है, मगर खबर है तुम्हें मुझको कितनी चाहत है। मैं सर के बल चलाऊंगा बस सदा दीजिए, करबला याद बहुत آتی ہے بلا لیجے، کریم کرب و بلا معجزہ دکھا دیجے، کربلا یاد بہت آتی ہے بلا لیجے، کریم کرب و بلا۔ بار دیگر صلوات علی محمد و آل محمد۔
بر محمد و آل محمد بلندتر صلوات، اللہم صل علی محمد و آل محمد وعجل فرجہم۔ یہاں سنبھل کر قدم اٹھانا، یہاں سنبھل کر قدم اٹھانا، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ بات ہرگز نہ بھول جانا، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، اور جہان صبر و رضا یہی ہے، خدائے صبر و رضا یہی ہے، ارے یہاں پہ آتے ہیں چل کے مہدی، بہشت زہرا یہ سرزمین ہے، یہاں ہے زہرا کا آنا جانا، یہاں ہے زہرا کا آنا جانا، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، اور دعائیں دیں گے حسین تم کو، یہاں پہ آنسو اگر بہائے، ارے جہاں پہ بیٹی نے بے وطن کی ستمگروں سے تماچ کھائے، یہاں پہ خوشیوں کو بھول جانا، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، اور یہاں پہ گزری ہے وہ قیامت، ملا نہ اس کو سکون اب تک، ارے ردائیں چھننے کے غم میں عابد، لحد میں روتا ہے خون اب تک، یہاں پہ ہرگز نہ مسکرانا، ارے یہاں پہ ہرگز نہ مسکرانا، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، اور سواری آئے گی ایک وہاں سے نجف کی جانب نگاہ رکھنا، ارے جب آئے شام غریباں اس دم علی کو زینب کا پرسہ دینا، تم آنسوؤں کے دیے جلانا، یہ کربلا ہے، یہ کربلا ہے، اور کسی کے دل میں لگی ہے برچی، کسی کے بازو کٹے یہیں پر، ہے علی کی بیٹی کے کتنے یوسف लहू में डूबे हैं इस ज़मीं पर, लुटा है सादात का घराना। ये करबला है, ये करबला है, यहाँ संभल कर कदम उठाना। ये करबला है, ये करबला है। बराए ताजील ज़हूर इमाम ज़माना बाज़ बुलंद सलावत।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Peace be upon Al-Hussein, the children of Al-Hussein, and the companions of Al-Hussein, and may the mercy and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon them all. My dear scholars, my brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I praise Allah, the most merciful and the most gracious, for giving me the opportunity to once again commemorate the holy month of Muharram, where we commemorate the tragedies that befell upon the son of Bibi Fatima az-Zahra, his family and his companions. A brief introduction to myself. My name is Rizwan Rahimtullah. I am currently the Peterborough Husseini Islamic Center Jamaat President, and I'm extremely proud of the community that I have been given the opportunity to serve. As you will have seen from yesterday's short presentation, our community in Peterborough have embarked on a project known as the Al-Qaim Project in order to cater for our current and future needs. We are very close to completion, but we really need your help to assist us in removing our deficit and to help us to upgrade our current center to a standard that is not only in synergy with the new center, but also one that our Imam alayhi salam would be pleased with. Please indulge me for a few minutes whilst I take you on a journey as to how we established the first purpose-built Shia center in Peterborough. After being expelled from Uganda in 1972, our community members came here as refugees within the United Kingdom. The love of the Ahlul Bayt amongst those individuals was such that regardless of how they lived, the first thing they did was to purchase a piece of land to build a center where the Azadari of Imam Hussein could be held. This was in 1974. In 1978, the masjid, today here where this live transmission is relayed, was built. Very soon, the lovers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the rightful chosen ones began to move to Peterborough. And in 1992, in order to cater for the growing number of families, our entire center was upgraded and refurbished. That was 28 years ago, and our community has grown and continues to do so. There became a shortage of space for our community members, but especially for our future generation who attend Husseini Madrasa. Currently, we have nearly 270 regular attendees of our madrasa, and space for them is very, very tight. We are even holding madrasa classes in a mobile classroom as we don't have the space internally. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens doors for us all, and we had a 1 in a million opportunity to purchase a warehouse and land that was next door to us. I personally see this as an amazing blessing and an opportunity that was given to us all. We purchased the warehouse and the land in 2007, 13 years ago. We had some setbacks that were beyond our control, but one of them was regards finance. Alhamdulillah, with the generosity of our internal community and our brothers and sisters from around the world, whether with their confidence in us, their financial help, or their du'as, we have reached a stage where we are nearing completion of our Al-Qaim building, albeit with a deficit of almost £1 million. A further £1 million is also required to upgrade our 23-year-old center and much needed security. Please, let me show you a short video of the Al-Qaim building as it stands today. Once complete, the Al-Qaim site will include creche facilities for our younger visitors, a suitable sized mehfil hall for our respected ladies, a light sports area for our youth, a room for our respected elders that will cater for their functions no matter how large or small, an increase to the number of our interactive classrooms to nurture the needs of our madrasa students, our very own interactive study room with library and computers to assist our members with Islamic and secular studies. More washrooms and wudu facilities for both ladies and gents. And much, much more. Many have been generous towards our local community project, and rewards will both be seen in this life and invested to the hereafter. Every penny that you have donated towards an Islamic mission, such as the Al-Qaim project, are Sadqa al-Jariyah, and investments that will transition to our eternal abodes, making them the best forms of investment. It is with this note that I ask you to pledge once again to ease the deficit that we still retain, with a final push for every individual to donate and help the community to complete the project in the predicted time frame. No matter how large or small you can afford, it is an equal deed of generosity where your intention will serve you well before Allah the Almighty. Please act today and help us. We have ijazah from our Marja, His Eminence Al-Sistani, for Qums. Each zikr of our Imams, each letter of the Holy Quran that is recited within the walls of our new center, whether by our esteemed scholars, the worshippers attending our various majalis, by our young madrasa students amongst others, will be written and will be rewarded to us, insha'Allah, both in this world and the next. Thank you. Finally, Peterborough Husseini Islamic Center extends its deepest condolences to all mu'mineen on the tragic martyrdom of the Master of Martyrs, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Azamallahu ujurana wa ajurakum bimusabina bil Hussein alayhi salam. Great is our reward and your reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our grief for Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ثم جعلناك على شريعة من الأمر فاتبعها ولا تتبع أهواء الذين لا يعلمون. The discussion concerning Sharia law and the death penalty is without a doubt one of the most important discussions in Islamic thought. A discussion that affects the lives of Muslims and non-Muslims alike, and one that requires a thorough dissection, for it's one from which many lessons may be learned and many important examples may be derived. Sharia law, when you conjure up images, are images that are normally associated with beheadings, with executions, with cutting of hands, and indeed with hanging people. When people normally discuss Sharia law, the images or the definitions that they have of Sharia law are definitions very much regarding the penal system, regarding the punishments which are meted out if, for example, someone commits a crime within an Islamic state. When we hear, for example, that Muslims cut off your hands if you steal, or that Muslims will kill you if you apostate, or that Muslims will stone the adulterous to death, or that Muslims will throw, for example, people off buildings, or they may even go to punishments even worse than this, you find that it's contradictory on the one hand to say that Islam is a religion of peace and then have punishments like the punishments that can be found within Sharia law. This therefore led many non-Muslims to always have a problem with Sharia law and even have a fear of Sharia law and even push certain Muslims away from Islam because of these punishments. We cannot deny that these punishments of beheading, of stoning, of, for example, whipping, execution, crucifixion, are all either in the Quran or in the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because the main sources of law are always going to be across the board in all the schools of Islam, the Quran or the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family. They may differ on other areas, such as how much a person will rely on consensus or their intellect or the public interest or, for example, the customs of the time. But generally speaking, in the Quran and the Sunnah, you find that there are verses and there are hadiths that say, someone steals, cut their hands. Someone commits zina, make sure that you stone them to death. Someone who, for example, is of those who murders, then murder them as well. Someone who wages war against Allah and His Prophet, as we see in the verses in Surah Al-Ma'idah, you should either kill them, crucify them, or you should banish them from the earth. All of these, when a person hears them, makes them ask questions. That if Islam is a religion that wants to promote peace, and how many of us tell our non-Muslim friends that Islam means peace? When my Muslim friends or non-Muslim friends then open the Quran, and they're like, sir, but here it says, the male thief and the female thief cut their hands off. Or in the couple of verses before it says, crucify, kill, or cut even further. Or in other verses it tells me to lash and whip. Then someone turns around and says, well, how could Islam be a religion of peace if it has punishments like this? And that's why you find that people, when they look at states which are known as Islamic states, in many cases they say that these are the states where you have Sharia law. And we don't want any of that law near any of our countries. People normally associate Islamic laws with where? Countries like Pakistan, Iran, Saudi Arabia. These are seen in one way or the other as Islamic republics. A lot of their constitutions are made up with a basis and a backdrop looking at the religion of Islam. I ask all those Muslims who claim that they love their religion, how many of them would love to live in an Islamic state? Because it's all fine and dandy when you're sitting in London or in New York or in Sydney to talk about your love for Islam. But would you like to go and live in Islamic states? As in, there are many who will praise and revere an Islamic state, for example, like Pakistan or Saudi Arabia. Ask them, why don't you go and live there? Why are you here in the UK or living in America or Canada? Why don't you go and live in a country where you are able to hear the adhan 5 times a day? And you are able to be around those who wear hijab like all your families wear hijab. Because obviously all the viewers who are watching don't have a single member of their family who doesn't wear hijab. Not a single cousin. All of them who are watching all wear hijab. So why don't you go and live in a country where you can join others who all wear hijab as well, where you are able to walk around in that country knowing that, for example, if it's an Islamic state, there is a chance that you may be punished with these punishments of Islamic law. It's very interesting that the same Muslims who promote the Islamic legal system are living, for example, in Peterborough. You have a chance to go and live, for example, now in Saudi Arabia. You can go and get a job in Saudi and go and live there. Why stay here and rely on the benefits of here? If not the benefits literally, then metaphorically. The benefits, for example, of being able to have businesses, live your own liberal lifestyle, for example. Go somewhere where you have to live stringently, where you have to live according to the Islamic guidelines. Because when a person says that I love my religion, then surely that person should be living in a country which ensures that their religion is protected. Over here, when I live here in this country, I see there are pubs around me, there are clubs around me, there are people who, for example, supposedly are going to burn in hellfire, whereas I'm the only one who's going to go to heaven. So why do I want to be around people like this? Why don't I go to an environment where there is majority Muslims, where Islamic law is at the helm, and where I appreciate what the Quran says? You steal, we'll cut your hands off. And you leave a religion, then we'll kill you. And if you're of those who commits murder, an eye for an eye. And if you're of those we find committing zina, because of course Muslims in non-Muslim countries do not commit any zina. So if you're of those who commit zina, then the only thing we'll do to you is lash you. We'll lash you and lash you and lash you to teach you a lesson so that you don't do this again. I remember in my own eyes once in Saudi Arabia, in the mall outside the Haram in Mecca, there was an announcement being made about a person who was going to get lashed. Now you can imagine, for the first time in my life, now I'm thinking, hold on, what's going on here? Someone's going to get whipped, for example. That person had been trying to talk to somebody in the mall and he'd been following her around the whole way. Islamically, Saudi Arabia says it's not allowed. So you come and stand here, let everybody watch as well, because that's also a deterrent. And therefore that person was being whipped with a stick, a number of lashes. Of course, at that time you're baffled what's going on. Most people's conception, therefore, of Sharia law became even more barbaric when they saw ISIS. Because when they saw ISIS, they said, hold on, if ISIS is wrong on the level of its political opinions, but on the level of what it takes from the Quran and what it takes from the Sunnah, you cannot deny that what ISIS is doing has a certain history or precedent in Islamic law. If ISIS now decides to kill an apostate, you can find it in your own traditions. That someone who leaves Islam, you have to kill him. If ISIS now comes and whips someone who commits zina, it's in your own prophetic traditions. If ISIS cuts the hand publicly or crucifies, as you've seen in the YouTube videos, someone publicly, why do you have a problem with it? Because your own prophet, peace be upon him, and his family is the one who came, left those traditions. And the Quran as well is a book that you claim is a book until the day of judgment. Therefore, if the Quran is applicable to the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, then the Quran is applicable wherever you are in the world. How many Muslims will tell you halal of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is halal until the day of judgment, and the haram of Muhammad is haram until the day of judgment? So they therefore say that there's no gray area. This is black and white. Whatever is in the Quran has to be implemented at all times. You cannot say that that was only for that time. Therefore, when you came to this discussion of Sharia law and the death penalty, even when the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Rowan Williams, when he just started discussing Sharia law as a method, not implementation, just as a method of a legal system that can be applied, you found straight away there was uproar in this country. What do you mean Sharia law? What is the Sharia law? You're going to bring beheading, crucifixion, torture, whipping. We are a country which is a free country, has none of these punishments. We don't want anything to do with Sharia law. What then is our methodological reply on this area? Because believe you me, even our youngsters today, they ask questions different from the questions we used to ask. If me and you asked these questions in our time, we'd have got a slap. Whereas in their time, you find that the questions they ask are valid. That if Islam is a religion of peace, what is the Sharia law? What is this system where you end up beheading and killing and crucifying? If ISIS was wrong, you have the same literature that ISIS has. What's there to stop you when you are also of those who promote? Because those who say that I want to live in an Islamic state, you'll find that they're therefore promoting that Sharia law should be at the helm. Let us tonight examine in this discussion Sharia law and the death penalty, in order that we're able to understand the different nuances involved in each and every section of it. And I'd like to do this in the following stages. Number one, what is the aim of Islamic law? And what difference is there, if little, if any, between a normal legal system not on the basis of religion and an Islamic legal system? Number two, when we pick up an Islamic legal manual at home, how many sections of that legal manual tell you to behead or to stone or to kill? And what normally makes up the majority of a legal manual at home of any Muslim household? Number three, these laws and punishments, are they to be applied anywhere or under certain conditions? What is Ayatollah Sistani's opinion about whether a state should necessarily have the hudud, and what are the opinions of others? Number four, we cannot deny that these hudud are there. If they are there in Shia majority countries, are they just to be approached literally? You commit zina, I have to kill you. You've stolen, I have to cut your hands. Or is there a space for forgiveness, repentance, discretion, and doubt of those who are administering the law? Number five, is there any door that opens reform for Islamic law? And how important is it for us to understand the difference between Sharia and fiqh, text and context, when examining this particular discussion? Number six, those who say that Islam has remained silent on certain areas, has Islam opened doors for possible reforms on areas such as slavery, and areas such as apostasy, and areas such as blasphemy? And number seven, have there been Islamic states which have been oppressive? And have there been Islamic states that were even willing to put out a death sentence on the very family of the man who brought them their religion, Islam? Let's examine this and dissect the topic in complete depth. If someone was to ask you the question today, what is the aim of Islamic law? All of you study at madrasa, for example. You either study Sharia or you study fiqh. If you ask any Muslim, when you were younger, what did you study at school on a Saturday morning, let's say in Birmingham or Bradford? Or for example, you're sitting in your local school somewhere in Canada or America, they'll say to you, amongst the classes we took were classes on tarikh, classes on fiqh, some will say classes on Sharia. Even we use the word Sharia sometimes, or we use the word fiqh. But many of these Muslims begin to follow law like robots, without understanding the philosophy and the aim of that legal system. As in, how many Muslims, if you ask them about something, is it halal or haram, they'll give you an answer in 1 second. If you ask them, what's the philosophy of this whole legal system? What's the philosophy in turn of any legal system? Here, I live in Britain. What's the philosophy and aim of British law? You'll find that there is a correlation between all legal systems and what they seek to protect. And Islam isn't much different. How do I explain this? British law, number one, seeks to protect our life. Do we agree? When I see, for example, a speed camera, and how much we don't like speed cameras, whether we like it or we don't, that speed camera is there. For what reason? Why would you stick that speed camera in the way? Because you know the human being, if you don't put laws, the human being can at times turn into an animal on that road. That human being knows that there's a chance, if they go fast on this road, there could be a child crossing. But that human being on that day decides that, no, I'm going to go fast. Watch the human, when you put law in their life, how suddenly they slow down when the white lines come in front of them. Show me the fastest driver, when it comes to the white lines, suddenly from 60 all the way down. Why? One way, fear of penalty fine, because the human never likes to give money away. But the second reason is what? The second reason is that there's a law. That law is there to protect, number one, life. I do not turn around and say, why are there laws? I don't want a structured religion. How many do you hear today? I say, I don't like Islam because it's too structured. So why are you living in a country where there's structured law? We have structured law around us as a society. There are structured laws. You can go into this area at this time. You can park in this parking spot at this time. You can drive at this mile per hour at this time. Why? Because I want to protect your life, number one. Number two, British legal system wants to protect my intellect. It wants to allow my intellect to flourish. Number three, it wants to protect my property as well. There are laws to safeguard my property. Number four, laws to safeguard my honor as well. I come from a particular lineage. I want my honor looked after. My daughters go to school. I want certain laws which look after my children from being hurt, from being abused, from being attacked. I want my wife to be able to walk in the street with respect. When I look at any legal system, it normally has protection of property, honor, intellect, life. Islam just adds one more, and that is protection of religion. When you say what is the aim of Sharia law, the aim of Sharia law is to protect someone's property, honor, intellect, life, and religion. If you want it as an acronym, PHILR. P-H-I-L-R. If someone today came and said to you, that why do you follow Islamic law? Why are you adamant that you have halal and haram and wajib and makruh? Say, because these laws have come for my maslahah, to keep me away from fasad. They've come for my benefit, to keep me away from that which could corrupt me. I want my nafs, myself, to grow and become a servant of the Lord, not a servant of itself, where it goes down to its lowly desires. The aims and the maqasid of Sharia, Sharia meaning that stream or that path that leads you to the fountain of salvation, was that it sought to protect your property. Islamic law sought to protect your property, your honor, your intellect, your life, and your religion. When it came and sought to protect these, someone said that the bulk of Islamic law is therefore what? Is the bulk of Islamic law to go towards a world where it punishes? Go to any household in a Muslim community today, especially the Shia community. Let's say you go to the household, tell him, give me your legal manual, your Islamic Sharia law legal manual, your legal manual that you have at home. Say, for example, the Risala of Ayatollah Sistani, may Allah lengthen his life. All of us have the Risala of Ayatollah Sistani at home. I ask all of you, in that Risala of Ayatollah Sistani, the section from the beginning, is it about theft and how you cut the hand? Is the first section about killing the apostate? Is the first section about stoning the adulterous? What's the first chapter in the book of Masail which you normally come across? After the discussion about taqleed and ijtihad, normally it's about purification. Isn't that true? What's that chapter? Tahara. If Islam was a religion that was all about killing and stoning and murder and punishing, why is the first chapter about tahara? About purification? In a world of COVID-19, where we've all reassessed the way we move with our hands and our bodies, Islam from the beginning had said, listen, there's certain laws of purification. If you guys don't observe them, even one bacteria can make you all start losing your heads. Yeah? One virus can make you all lose your heads. That first chapter in Islamic law, after taqleed and ijtihad, is what? Tahara. When Islam guides us legally, the first chapter of Ayatollah Sistani's Risala about Tahara, for example, it's telling us about purity. If you ejaculate, there is a certain method of purification. If you urinate, there's a certain method of purification. If, for example, you are of those who sees certain foods, some of those foods may be pure, some may be impure. There may be certain habits that you have, and after a monthly cycle, for example, where there are certain purification. Before you go to pray, there is a purification. Before you go to perform Hajj, there is a purification. These laws at the beginning, what have they got to do with apostasy? Because the myth is that Sharia law is a set of laws about killing and burning and stoning. You come to my legal text that I have at home. It begins with tahara. After tahara, what does it go to? Salah. and it goes to Saum, and it goes to Hajj. Why? Because these are means in which I grow my taqwa as a human being. If I can grow my God consciousness, I'm not going to go to the world of those areas which are going to be areas which destroy me. When you have the second chapter going to Salah, that there should be 5 times a day where you don't let this world take you over. Come and sit and talk to your Lord. These are the timings for it. This is the way that you approach it. In the morning, it's as if you're reading grace. Get up in the morning. Talk to your Lord in the morning. In the middle of the day, when the money is flying from bank account to bank account, you take 10 minutes out and remember that there's a day of judgment. You're going to be asked about that money that you're earning, that money that you're spending. When it comes to the evening, just before you go to bed, talk to your Lord and thank Him for what He's given you, because it will humble you and humble you alongside your family. I ask you, how many people, when they talk about Islamic law, talk about the laws of prayer? How many religions that have prayer have laws regarding prayer? Judaism and Islam focus on laws even about the way you approach prayer. Fasting, you as a Muslim, try 1 month of the year, it's obligatory on you in the month of Ramadan to fast, to remember the poor, so that you don't take this world for granted. Remember those who don't have a meal. These are the laws. And if you miss a fast, there has to be an expiation. Part of that expiation is to look after those poor in the world. I ask all these people, you come and look at my legal system. My legal system begins first with looking at acts of worship which humble me as a human, which refine me as a human. When I see people doing yoga, when I see people doing meditation, I appreciate that in this world, a person needs time out from this world. Therefore, when the first sections of Islamic law are about purity, prayer, fasting, maybe visiting God's house once a year, what other dimension? Zakat, charity. Don't be a person who's a miser, a person who's stingy. Give away from yourself. Then after that, not just acts of worship, your personal relationships, the way that you treat your wife, the laws regarding your relationship, the laws regarding your business partners. Don't scam your business partner. Don't stab your business partner in the back. This is all Sharia law. Do they mention this? When people talk about Sharia law, what do they mention? They mention barbaric acts, beheading, stoning, ISIS, and so on. I asked them, the legal manual itself of Ayatollah Sistani, may Allah lengthen his life, all of within there you have discussions about how to refine yourself individually, acts of worship, and your relationship with others. But there is no denying that even if the legal manual says this, no one can deny that there's a reality that in the Quran and in the world of Ahadith, there are discussions about killing, about stoning, about burning, about throwing off buildings. These punishments which fall either under qisas, an eye for an eye, retaliation, or hudud, fixed punishments, or ta'zirat, discretionary punishments and judgments, these are to be applied in an Islamic state, not in Peterborough. Yes? If now in Peterborough I find out that someone's stolen from my house, yes, I'd be pretty angry. But can I get that person and say, according to Islamic law, you have now stolen from my house, therefore put your hands out right now as I have to chop them? No, not at all. Why? Because these can only be applied where? In an Islamic state. At the origin, in an Islamic state, that wilayah that we spoke about a few nights ago was with who? With Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih. Was with Imam Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. What is the common denominator? Those chosen by Allah, ma'soom, who will not err in their judgment when they come and give a judgment. Why? You kill one human being, it's as if you've killed the whole of humanity. When there are certain ahkam which are ahkam wila'iyya, only a ma'soom can administer these ahkam. Yes, we said, Ayatollah al-Khumaini was amongst others, such as Naraqi and Karaki, who had said that you can implement these hudud as you have in Iran, that implementation. Ayatollah al-Sistani talks of what? The Dawla al-Madaniyya, meaning that you can have a state that doesn't have to have the implementation of these punishments. In Iraq today, You may have a leader, for example, who is not a marja, a leader who may not even be Shi'i, a leader who may be democratically elected. I ask you, Ayatollah Sistani is the head of Iraq? He's not. Ayatollah Sistani, do we agree that he has a certain wilaya as a faqih? Yes, he does. But does he believe that this dawla should go towards a dawla where there is Islamic state? Or can it be, for example, a state where there is a just person and that there are scholars who are there, checks and balances, they can see what's happening. Therefore, when you come to these, Ayatollah Sistani doesn't turn around and say, I was sitting, myself and a couple of others, with Sayyid Muhammad Rada Sistani, son of Ayatollah Sistani. Sayyid Muhammad Rada Sistani was sitting there. We were next to Ayatollah Sistani in Najaf. When we were next to him, we asked him about the Sultan of Brunei and the punishment of those of the same gender community in Brunei. Many of you would have remembered that there was a story that Sultan of Brunei had said that this punishment should be administered. When we asked Ayatollah Sistani this question, his son Sayyid Muhammad Rada Sistani, who is a scholar in his own right, he was sitting there. He said, for us, our opinion is the hudud are not implemented in the period of the ghaibah of the 12th Imam. They are not to be implemented. When he says that, this is the son of Ayatollah Sistani, a teacher of Kharij al-Fiqh, a scholar in his own right. He is sitting there and he said to us, I was sitting there, one of our beloved friends was sitting there, a sheikh who was sitting there. They are witnesses, people who were sitting next to me. He said, in the absence of the 12th Imam, these laws are not to be implemented according to Agha's opinion. When he says that, therefore, those who put a clamor out for us on the one hand, you have that Ayatollah Sistani says no. Maybe others have said yes. Maybe others have said no. In Iran, however, they went ahead at the beginning of the revolution. At the beginning of the revolution, after the referendum that I spoke about, there was an Islamic Republic. When there's an Islamic Republic, what does this mean? It means that part of the wilaya of the faqih is that he also implements the hudud. Meaning, if we find someone who's committed zina, or someone who's stolen, or for example, people who may be charged with apostasy, then they are to be either killed or executed and so on. Did this happen? It happened. But when we say these punishments are there, is it that easy for these punishments just to take place? So for example, now Salim comes up to me, or for example, Muhammad comes up to me and he says to me that we've heard that so-and-so in the Islamic State has committed what? Has committed adultery. You hearing, okay, no problem. Do you know you have a chance that you yourself are going to get punished? Say, well, what do you mean? I'm the one who's the snitch. No. Not only are you a snitch, but for this to take place, for this in an Islamic state, for the punishment to take place where that person is to be punished because they've committed adultery, for example, or for example, other areas, there are stringent measures which show us that these measures are more to bring deterrence rather than what? Rather than to bring the punishment. Because when you look at the tough measures that are there, you won't believe it. Do you know for adultery, for it to be punished, how many witnesses? 4. And these 4 witnesses for adultery, all of them have to have seen the kuhul stick enter the kuhul jar. By the way, this is jargon in Islamic law, that they say the kuhul stick has to have entered the kuhul jar. You have to have seen it in your own eyes. You can't say, I heard a rumor that so-and-so. Why? Because this is someone's life at stake. This is someone's life at stake. Therefore, 4 of you have to have seen the same thing at the same time and reported the details in exactly the same way. Where's this going to happen? Unless you have certain people who have a vendetta against somebody. And the human being, nothing surprises me about them, in all honesty. The human being, and this is one of the dangers in reality, that there could be a particular person who ends up giving the worst of image to that state. Why? Because they have a vendetta against someone, that man or that woman. What do they want to do? They want to accuse. And when they want to accuse, they may even tell 3, 4 of their best mates, come with me, and make sure that we write the same thing, so we get this poor girl killed. On the first level, what do the laws say? 4 witnesses have to see the same thing at the same time. Report it in exactly the same way. Someone says, Sayyidina, what if 3 report it the same way and 1 differs? The other 3 have to be whipped. Because you guys nearly killed someone. You guys, you 3, nearly were the cause of someone's death. You have to be whipped. You have to be punished. You think it's easy, but we promise you, this is what we saw. I don't know, by the way, what you're doing, spying on people's lives, but no problem. Let's say that you've spied on these people's lives. That is not something that Islam wanted. That a person goes around spying on people's lives. If someone's doing something in their own house, it's not my business at the end of the day. Yes, there may be certain acts which us and non-Muslims agree with. If I find out there's a pedophile ring in houses, what do I say? That I don't want to interfere when children are being molested. And when we therefore bring punishments, someone says, but you bring Islamic punishments, barbaric. There are still places in America where they execute people because of these things. Has anyone turned around and said to certain of the conservative traditional states of the Republicans that execution is not allowed? There'll be an uproar in some cases. They'll say to you, that rapist, that pedophile should be executed. So why, when Islam talks of execution, there's a problem? But when you talk of the electric chair and that method of execution, nobody can say a word. And Islam doesn't just say that adultery, straight away you accuse someone. You accuse someone, there's a chance that you yourself are the one who's going to end up getting punished. Further than that, when you come to adultery, where is stoning in the Quran or stoning in Hadith? There's not a single verse about stoning someone who commits adultery in the Quran. Where is it then? It's in the world of Hadith. Remember this with me. Some have even argued that what's in the Quran? The whipping of someone who commits adultery. Someone says, hold on, Sayyidina, I don't understand. You have a hadith that says stone someone who commits zina. And you have a hadith that says whip someone who commits adultery. So is there a contradiction? On the first level they said, no, you stone the one who's married and commits adultery. And you whip those who are what? Who are unmarried and commit adultery. Because the one who's married, and I'm saying again, those conditions of the witnesses and so on, that person has access in his life with a relationship. Whereas the one who's unmarried, no. Some others said no. Originally it was stoning. The context, this is fundamental. The context at that time when these verses were being revealed, you had empires preceding Islam where stoning the adulteress was normal. As in, if you go to look at the laws of religions before Islam or empires within Islam, it wasn't seen as something barbaric to stone someone who commits adultery. But I ask you, one of the first areas we have to look at is what? The difference between Sharia and fiqh. Sharia, divine law. Fiqh is human interpretation of God's law. There's one thing which is God's law, Sharia. Fiqh, human interpretation of God's law. How many factors affect the human being when they're interpreting law? While many have taqwa, I don't doubt, I do not deny that maybe 1 or 2% of the way you interpret law is affected by your upbringing or the climate that you grew up in. There's no doubt that where you've grown up has an effect on the way you interpret law. Further than that, someone who interprets law, fiqh is an exercise of fallible human beings. At the end of the day, those fallible human beings may have made a struggle, may have exerted a struggle, but ultimately those fallible human beings can also be of those whose opinions can change, can differ, can evolve. So you have Sharia, fiqh, you have text and you have context. Why do I say this? The Quran, when it was revealed, some of these punishments were normal. 1,400 years later, these punishments in many cases are horrific. Ayatollah al-Bujnordi had a conversation, he reports, with Ayatollah al-Khomeini about stoning. He said, even though stoning is part of the traditions, at the moment it brings a horrific image to Islam. And therefore Ayatollah al-Khomeini changes his opinion on stoning in the early 80s. Why? We don't deny that it may have been in the text. There's a difference between text and context. Something which at that time was seen as acceptable. Someone says, but Sayyidina, Halal of Muhammad is halal until the day of judgment. Haram of Muhammad is haram until the day of judgment. We do not deny that such principles exist. But at the same time, a person has to look on the second level, the socio-political dimension, the image of the religion of Islam. Is this what is looking after the maqasid of the Sharia? If the Sharia's maqasid was to protect honor, life, intellect, religion, property, me doing this, is this taking people to Islam or away from Islam? At the time in Medina, when many of these laws were revealed, you could say to me at that time, people were not affected. They had heard that the Arabs beforehand were involved in retaliation, were involved in murder. They can understand the possible reform. Today, maybe these laws, maybe are laws which are not all to be implemented. And that's why Iran, for example, in some cases, other places in other cases, there are certain of the hudud. At the beginning of the revolution, you would see that there may have been executions. There may have been hangings. There may have been, for example, stoning. Later on, a lot of these in the constitution, there was a change. That not all of these were to be implemented. Why? At the end of the day, you try something. You try your hardest as they tried sincerely to follow. But you will see that certain things is different in 1983 to, for example, Mecca 1,400 years ago. There's a complete difference. Further than that, the Ahlul Bayt wanted us that if we found any doubt on any issue, not to punish and not to administer the punishment. How many times do you hear about films beyond reasonable doubt? Or you hear in the courtroom, beyond reasonable doubt. What does that mean, beyond reasonable doubt? Within Islamic law, we have clear principles. If there's any doubts, let them go. Where do we get these principles from? The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, someone came to him once, he said, I've committed a crime, I have to be punished. He said, okay, don't worry, pray. He said to him, Ya Rasulullah, I've committed a crime where it's written that I have to be punished. He says, okay. At that moment, the person finished the salah. Rasul said, what did you do? He said, I just prayed. He said, okay, good. Allah has forgiven you now. Go. You're forgiven. Ahlul Bayt, if they saw that there was a chance to forgive, just move on. Move on in which sense? Not in the sense for any crime, but to try and tell the person that, listen, you've made the effort to open up, to admit, maybe there are those who did commit zina. Why do I sit here as if we have glass houses? We look at ourselves. We look at others, they committed zina. How many commit zina privately? How many have committed zina without doing something according to Islamic law? Someone may commit zina, but then they come up and they say, listen, I'm sorry. And that's why many ayahs of the Quran about the hudud, what's the ayah after? But if they do tawbah. ISIS, what was it about? ISIS, as soon as they found someone, the end, punish. What if that person does tawbah? Okay, I done something haram. I admit that I may have stolen. Even when it comes to the laws of stealing, people say, you guys cut the hands. If someone is in a state where there's a famine, then that person's hand deserves to be cut. Why? Why should we cut their hands? The state has let the people go into a state of poverty. This person, of course, has to go out and get a meal. When that person has to go out and get a meal, in Islamic law, when there's famine, there's hunger, people steal, you don't cut their hands. Further than that, even if they have stolen, ask them, do they know the laws of stealing or not? Even further than that, tell them, listen, this is your first chance. Don't do this again. Because you've ruined someone's business now by taking their products. You brought tension in the community. Don't do it again. The idea wasn't that I straight away administer and kill. The idea was that I build an environment. Which environment? An environment where I'm forgiving. I'm open to even accepting that blood money will be enough. When it comes to murder and retaliation, many think that Islam says if you murder an eye for an eye, you murdered a member of my family, I'm going to kill a member of yours. The Quran, however, says, but forgive them. Or if they can pay something as blood money, then try and let them pay something as blood money. For forgiveness is better. Al-Hurr al-Amili in Wasa'il al-Shi'a, one of our most famous texts, has a whole chapter how forgiveness is better than retaliation and qisas in Islamic law from the hadiths of Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamu alayhim. But unfortunately, what problem do we have? Sometimes those who administer law are different from the spirit of law. You have the text of law, you have the spirit of law. The text may seem stringent, but when Christ came for the lost sheep of the children of Israel, he came to bring forgiveness and love and spirit that looks, people make mistakes. Someone's committed zina, they made a mistake. They committed adultery, they made a mistake. They've drunk alcohol, they made a mistake. Try and reform them. Talk to them. Imam Ali alayhi salam would say those who go to, for example, have to go to prison, sit with them. Talk to them. Let them understand the laws of their religion. Try and find methods of rehabilitation. Can you not rehabilitate someone who's addicted to adultery or alcohol? There's alcoholic. I think they call it Alcohol Anonymous or something. There's places for rehabilitation. What are these places? Places where you try and tell people that, look, let's try and find a way away from this addiction. Therefore, in Islam, the idea that someone kills you, you have to kill them back. No, forgiveness is better. Even if they can't afford blood money, go to the zakat. The zakat of the Muslims, get some money and let them pay that family. So that person doesn't have that burden. What do we see in all of this, therefore? We see, is there any scope for reform? There is. The door of ijtihad in Islamic law always allows for a scope of reform. Why? Because at the end of the day, the Quran was revealed in a certain place. We live in a certain place. You cannot tell me that every single verse of the Quran remained as it was. Even there are verses in the Quran which some ulama believe were abrogated from one time to another. The context of Mecca, early Islam, is different from Medina, later Islam. The way you approach certain issues in Mecca is different from Medina. Hence we have the discussions of the nasikh and we have the discussions of the mansukh. So when we therefore look at the door of ijtihad allows us to revisit the principles and the aims of law established by Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, when the Quran says ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاكَ عَلَى شَرِيعَةٍ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ. When the Quran says فَاتَّبِعَ, what does the Quran mean? The Quran is trying to tell us that the Holy Prophet was given a Sharia. He, in his position, he has divine authority. Now you who do not have divine authority, for example, you want to make a decision about, let's say, apostasy. Allam al-Hilli, for example, says apostasy can be one of the areas that goes towards ta'zir. Ta'zir means what? Discretion of the judge of the time. Because people ask, is it true that your religion, your Sharia law says that if I'm a Muslim and I leave Islam, you guys can kill me? For the love of God, someone who wants to leave Islam, why don't you just let them leave? Let them leave. The Quran says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. La ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. Someone doesn't want to be a Muslim. Why are we forcing them to remain a Muslim? Why do we make their lives miserable? If that person doesn't believe in the tenets of the religion of Islam, let them leave. Usul al-Din, many times we're told there is no taqleed in Usul al-Din, there's taqleed in the furu'. And I know there's nuances on this one line itself, but if I have someone who doesn't want Islam, Baba, let them leave. As long someone says, yeah, but I want to leave and I want to fight Islam in that country. At the end of the day, brother, you want to leave and then you want to cause uproar in the country. And then, there's a private members club, they tell you to wear a suit. You want to be a member, come and be a member. You want to turn up in jeans every day to that club. They can say, listen, we got rules and regulations here. That person who says to you that they want to leave Islam, let them leave. How many people, their lives are miserable because we force them to stay Muslim? Miserable lives. You want to ask me about Islam? Let the parents bring them. We can discuss. But if they feel that Islam is not for them, the way Ubaidullah, the son of Jahash, when he left the daughter of Abu Sufyan, he left her, he was not interested in that Islam. He converted to Christianity. That's it, he left. The Prophet didn't say, go after him, go butcher him, go kill. Let a person leave. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Whoever wants to believe, let them believe. And whoever wants to disbelieve, let them disbelieve. Every day I hear people saying that your religion says, yes, there may have been certain concepts of treason where a person enters, does their shahada with a group of people, and then behind the back goes to Abu Sufyan reporting, this is what they're doing, this is what Muhammad does. Treason, according to all general laws, is punishable by death. If I'm not mistaken, even this country a few years back were punishing those who had committed treason against the state. You know, how many do you hear he gave files from this organization to that organization, from this organization to that, and they have to hide somewhere because the state wants them. However, someone who's telling you, I genuinely do not believe in the Quran, I don't believe in the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, I want to leave Islam, let them leave. Further than that, someone might come, this law, they say, if you wage war against Allah and His Prophet, the Quran says in Surah 5 on verse 33 onwards, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, إنما جزاء الذين يحاربون الله ورسوله ويسعون في الأرض فسادا أن يقتلوا أو يصلبوا أو تقطع أيديهم وأرجلهم من خلاف أو ينفوا من الأرض. They say that the Quran says those who wage war against Allah and His Prophet and they cause corruption on the earth, then they are to be killed. I beg all of you, I ask you a question. How do you interpret waging war? Rasulullah sallallahu is not alive at the moment. So how do you interpret waging war? You have a whole state. How do you interpret waging war? Do you know how? You interpret waging war by picking out those who you feel are speaking out against the caliph who you feel represents you. And do you know what the problem with that is? Any of your political enemies, you can sentence them to Sharia law death. Big problem. Because when a hukum is in the hands of a ma'soom, I know that ma'soom will never be unjust. But when a hukum is in the hands of Hind's grandson, then I have worries about where that hukum will go. Because Islam, at the time of Karbala, there was a state called the Islamic State. And a Khalifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he claimed, and his father claimed, and the rest of the Umayyads claimed that they were God's Caliph, as per the title of the famous book. They're God's Caliph on the earth. God's Caliph has the whole of the Sharia law in his hands. Does he care about tahara? Not at all. Alcohol sits next to him. Does he care about najasa? Not at all. Does he care about salah? Not at all. Does he care about Saum? No. The aspects he cared about is that I can use the Quran for my own means. All I need are a number of factors. What are they? Number one, I need to make sure that I have a judge in my pocket. A judge who knows the verses and the laws of the religion of Islam inside out. A judge who can use an ayah which involves execution and say that get Muslim bin Aqil and execute him. Yes? Because how do you think Muslim bin Aqil was executed? Muslim bin Aqil was the victim of many innocent ones who in 1,000 years of Islam, Islamic states have used Sharia law to kill their own Muslims. Because sometimes you hear non-Muslims saying, we hate Sharia law. Believe you me, if you saw some of our khulafa, you would hate Sharia law as well. Because some of them, they didn't give you protection of life. No, they wanted your life to end. Nor did they give you protection of religion. If you weren't on the religion of Muawiyah and his mother, then you are to be executed. Nor did they give you protection of honor. Even if you were a 3-year-old girl, they'll use their horses to kick you across the fields. Did they give you a protection of property? They'd confiscate whatever properties you'd have. Who did Yazid have? He had on one side a judge in his pocket, Shuraih al-Qadi. And who else did he have? He had Ubaydullah bin Ziyad. Islamic law came and said, we want to protect society from adultery. Because adultery ruins the fabric of families. Before you knew it, the sons of adultery were in different places of power in the Islamic empire. This Ubaydullah, his father Ziyad was known as Ziyad, son of his father. Yes? And this Ubaydullah made sure that the judge, what is it we have in Islamic law? Someone who wages war against Allah and His Prophet, we kill him. He said, yes. He said, then we have orders from Sham. What are they? Kill Hussein bin Ali. Hussein bin Ali is who? He is the grandson of the same man you've taken laws from. Correct? So you found on the one hand, Islamic State ends up looking for the very man whose grandfather bought the religion. This is the saddest thing in our history. The man whose grandfather bought the religion, they now were looking for his son. Not just his sons, they were looking for his granddaughters. Not just his granddaughters, they didn't care if it was a 6-month-old. They would go after, was this the maqasid of the Sharia of Allah? That even a 6-month-old is not safe from an arrow? Was this the maqasid of Sharia that water is not given to children? And then he ordered, get Muslim bin Aqil. Yes? Muslim bin Aqil, where was he? He was in Kufa. What crime had he committed? No crime. What was it? You're waging war against Allah and His Prophet. For the love of God, I'm related to that Prophet. For the love of God, who is more learned than me and my cousin about the life of that Prophet? One Muslim found a society that had given in to that Islamic State. They weren't ready in some cases to speak out. In the beginning, thousands were with him. By the time he left Masjid al-Kufa, he was walking alone in the land of Kufa. Walking alone, wondering what's going to happen to him. He knew that the word had been out. Capture him. It doesn't matter if he's Muhammad's great nephew. You kill him wherever he may be. It showed that if Islamic law and Sharia law is abused, anyone can be a victim of it. And he reached the house because he knew now were his final moments. He reached the house, he sat down. Whose house was it? The house of Taw'a. All of you know Taw'a, of course. He sat there, she came out of the house, she looked at him, she said, what are you doing here? He said, may I ask you for one thing? All of you know this line. I don't know how many nights I'm going to repeat this line in particular. All I want is some water to drink, for I am thirsty. She looked at him, she said, very well, I'll go and get you water, just wait here. He waited there, he was there. Her daughter came out, she looked at him, she began to have a conversation with him. The mother Taw'a came back. When the mother Taw'a came back, what was it? The mother Taw'a came back, she looked at him, she looked at the daughter sad. She said to him, what have you said to my daughter? Why is my daughter sad? He said to her that she looked towards the daughter. She said to her, my daughter, why are you sad? Has he done anything wrong to you? She said, no, mother. He told me he's a stranger in Kufa. He's a gharib. It broke my heart, oh mother of mine. And that moment the mother said, who are you? He said to her, I am Muslim bin Aqil. At that moment when she heard Muslim bin Aqil, she said to him, Aqil, son of who? He said, Aqil, son of Abu Talib. She looked at him, she said to him, then you must be the nephew of my Mawla, Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is the nephew of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said to her, yes, I am. She said, Muslim, hurry inside. You know they're all after you. They say that you have waged war against Allah and His Prophet. They want to catch you for blasphemy, treason. He himself went inside. That night while he was sleeping, he saw Rasulullah in his dream. He saw Amir al-Mu'mineen, he saw Fatima al-Zahra, all of them one by one saying, Muslim, Muslim, come to us. The next day they came all around the house of Muslim bin Aqil, led by Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath and others. They fought him, but this was the nephew of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He went and struck all of them until they called for more support to come. The support came, they surrounded him. Suddenly one of them struck him on the back of his head, and the other struck him when he was on the ground. They dragged his body towards the mosque towards the palace of Ibn Ziyad and Umar bin Sa'ad. He had his words with Ibn Ziyad, with Umar bin Sa'ad. He said, I have a debt, will you repay it for me? Umar bin Sa'ad said, never. Ibn Ziyad said, repay it for him. He said, I have a second request. He said, what is it? He said at that moment, give me an Islamic burial. They said, you'll never get one. He said, I have a final request. They said, what is it? He said, tell Hussein not to come towards Kufa. At that moment, they took the body of a Muslim and they they pushed him from the palace on the ground. His body dragged from one side of Kufa to another. The news, Imam al-Hussein was walking. His sister was, of course, Muslim's wife. She was walking as well with her, the daughter. Who was the daughter? The daughter Hamid, the daughter of Muslim. May Allah not show any of you the news when your daughter is lonely, when your daughter calls out for you, Baba, Baba. At that moment, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam did something which he would do for the rest of the days until the Sham Ghariba. What was it? He came, he tapped the head of the orphan girl. As soon as he tapped her head, she looked up at him. What did she say to him? She said, oh my Imam, tell me, have I become a yatim? Tell me, have I become an orphan? I beg you, tell me. The tears came down from the eyes of Imam al-Hussein. When he looked at her, he said to her, Hamida, how did you know? She said that you say when you tap the head of an orphan, it's light for you on the day of judgment. I know that now I've become an orphan. I want you all to listen to the words of Imam al-Hussein. Wallah, every year I recite these words, and every year they show me the softness of the heart of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Hamida, 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 know that my daughters are like your sisters, and my sons are like your brothers. She began to hug Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Do you know who came to her first when this happened? Sukaina came to her. When Sukaina came, she said, Hamida, don't worry, I'm here for you. I ask every one of you who was there for Sukaina when her dad died, who was there in Kufa when they were hitting Sukaina, who was there when she sat alone in the dungeons of Sham. I'm going to leave you with this final note and ask for your hajat at this moment. When they were there, they had gone to Kufa after Karbala. They were walking towards Kufa. They entered. All of a sudden, Taw'a saw the prisoners of Karbala. She came, she said, where's Hamida, the daughter of Muslim bin Aqil? Allahu Akbar. Taw'a had a message. It was an amana from Muslim. Taw'a saw Hamida. Hamida saw Taw'a. What did Hamida say? What did Taw'a say? Taw'a said, Hamida, I have a message from your father. Hamida looked towards Taw'a and said, before you tell me, I want to ask you one thing. When he fell towards his death, did anyone hold my father's body? Did anyone bury him? Did anyone carry him? Did anyone look after him? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide us the shafa'ah of Muslim bin Aqil. For the originators of this majlis, Ya Allah, bless them with the intercession of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the Surah Al-Fatiha, but before it, the loudest of your salawat.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein.
देख सर शबीर ने इस्लाम जिंदा कर दिया देख सर शबीर ने इस्लाम जिंदा कर दिया देख सर शबीर ने इस्लाम जिंदा कर दिया देख सर शबीर ने
اسلام زندہ کر دیا.
کربلا کو جس کے سجدے، کربلا کو جس کے سجدے نے معلا کر دیا.
دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا.
حشر تک کوئی یزیدی سر اٹھا سکتا نہیں، جس کا بدلہ زندگی پر دن چکا سکتا نہیں. فاطمہ کے لال نے، فاطمہ کے لال نے ایسا ایسا کر دیا.
دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا.
کربلا کو جس کے سجدے، کربلا کو جس کے سجدے نے معلا کر دیا.
دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا.
تیری قربانی سے پہلے دین کو آیا نہ چین، انبیاء سے بھی مکمل جو نہ ہو پایا حسین. ایک سجدے نے تیرے وہ، ایک سجدے نے تیرے وہ کام پورا کر دیا.
دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا.
کربلا کو جس کے سجدے، کربلا کو جس کے سجدے نے معلا کر دیا.
دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا.
آج بھی مانگا وفا ہے تیرے عباس پر، نہر پر غازی کے دونوں کٹ گیا بازو، مگر تا ابد اسلام کے، تا ابد اسلام کے پرچم کو اونچا کر دیا.
دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا.
کربلا کو جس کے سجدے، کربلا کو جس کے سجدے نے معلا کر دیا.
دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. دیکھ سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا.
مار کر ابن علی کو چینی زینب کی ردا، جب پرا کلمہ نبی کا پھر سرے کربو بلا. آل احمد کے لیے، آل احمد کے لیے یوں حشر برپا کر دیا.
دیکھے سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. دیکھے سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا.
کربلا کو جس کے سجدے، کربلا کو جس کے سجدے نے معلا کر دیا.
دیکھے سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. دیکھے سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا.
نازوں سے نو کے سینہ پہ ابھرا تھا جواد جو، کیسے بھولے گا زمانہ کے فاطمہ کے چاند کو. سر کٹا کے اس نے اپنا، سر کٹا کے اس نے اپنا یوں اجالا کر دیا.
دیکھے سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. دیکھے سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا.
کربلا کو جس کے سجدے، کربلا کو جس کے سجدے نے معلا کر دیا.
دیکھے سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. دیکھے سر شبیر نے اسلام زندہ کر دیا. یا حسین 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 یا حسین.
کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا.
کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا. کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا. کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا.
کھوٹا پکتا ہوا عباس کا پرچم آیا.
کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا. کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا.
جیسے جیسے میرے غازی کا علم جھکتا گیا، جیسے جیسے میرے غازی کا علم جھکتا گیا، پشت میں حضرت شبیر کی بھی غم آیا. کھوٹا پکتا ہوا عباس کا پرچم آیا.
کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا. کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا. کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا.
کربلا دیکھ لے اسلام بچانے کے لیے، کربلا دیکھ لے اسلام بچانے کے لیے. ساتھ کنبے کو لیے وارث آدم آیا، کھوٹا پکتا ہوا عباس کا پرچم آیا،
کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا، کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا، کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا،
ظالموں اس کو تو دو بوند پلا دو پانی، ظالموں اس کو تو دو بوند پلا دو پانی، اب لبوں پر میرے بے شیر کا ہے دم آیا، کھوٹا پکتا ہوا عباس کا پرچم آیا،
کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا، کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا، کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا،
سارے موسم تو گزر جاتے آ کر لیکن، سارے موسم تو گزر جاتے آ کر لیکن، پرچم شاہ کے لیے موسم ماتم آیا، کھوٹا پکتا ہوا عباس کا پرچم آیا،
کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا، کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا، کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا،
چاند ریحان نظر آیا محرم کا ادھر، چاند ریحان نظر آیا محرم کا ادھر، پرزمیں اشک میرے آنکھوں میں پیہم آیا، کھوٹا پکتا ہوا عباس کا پرچم آیا،
کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا، کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا، کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا،
کھوٹا پکتا ہوا عباس کا پرچم آیا،
کربلا والوں پہ یہ کیسا محرم آیا، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین،
رحم اللہ من قرأ سورة المبارکۃ الفاتحہ۔
السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ، السلام علیک یا امیر المؤمنین، السلام علیک یا فاطمة الزہرا سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وتسعة الماسومين من ذرية الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولى وابن مولى. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء. السلطان أبا الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. سيدي الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك واجعلنا من أنصارك وأوانك ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم كل وليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
रास्ता खुदा का है, रास्ता हुसैन का। दुनिया का कोई क़रिया या कोई भी कोना हो, आशूर पे चहलों पे आते हैं जहां भर से